It was like every time Theodore Johnson would show up in court, he somehow pulled a Puss in Boots, you know, the cartoon. And the judge will go, oh, look at him. Come on and look at him. He is so harmless. Like, he would never. What do you mean? The man is on trial for killing a woman. He admitted to this. What is not clicking here? So, this is how the story starts. A call was placed about a man who got hit by a train in London. He was badly injured, having lost both of his arms. He was bleeding heavily as paramedics rushed him to the hospital. As he was being treated in intensive care, the police visited his London home to help you notify a family member or a neighbor of what had happened, but they will not be prepared for what they would walk into. Right in the living room, on the floor, lay a woman in a big pool of blood. What would have been a courtesy call would quickly turn into a homicide investigation. The police would soon realize that this was not the first time that this man had killed a woman. He had been convicted twice before for the same crime, but somehow still managed to go on to do it for the third time. The question is, how did this happen? How was it allowed to happen? And how did the justice system fail so miserably to contain just one man? And the authorities also blaming the victim? Oh, it gets there. So this is the case of Theodore Johnson. Let's get into it. Hello everybody, how's everyone doing? I hope that everyone is doing well. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Gea. Welcome. Hi. In case you are new, I cover true crime stories while I apply my makeup, and if that sounds like something you'll be interested in, then please consider subscribing. So I missed last week's upload. That is because I was literally fighting for my life. I was, dare I say, bedridden. I couldn't walk properly. I was in so much pain, cramping, nauseous, headache. Everything that could possibly go wrong that time of the month was going wrong. But I feel better today, so I thought, okay, let's get back into business, baby. Let's get into today's story. Okay, enough about me. Let's get into today's story. So you know the drill. I have to do my brows first, and then I can come and get into today's story. Shall we do that? Great. So I'm going to be using this palette today. I'm trying to keep the color scheme from this palette because when I have an idea already of what I want to do, it just makes my job so much easier with the makeup application. Okay, so this time I will really link the products that I'm using in the description box in case you're interested. Other than that, let's get into today's story. So today's case is taking us to the UK. This is our second British case after the one that I covered about Ken Aslan last year, I think. So I will pop it either here or there to check it out in case you are interested. So Theodore Johnson was born in December 25th of 1954. He shares the same birthday with Jesus, but what he went on to do will very much upset Jesus. He was one of 11 children, so it's a big family, a very big family. My grandmother had 10 of her own, so people back in the day took be fruitful and multiply quite literally. Not much is known about his childhood or his upbringing, other than that he moved to the UK in 1980 to be with his wife Yvonne. So together with their two young children, they lived in an apartment or a flat, as it's called here in the UK, in Wolverhampton. He worked as a mechanic and his wife worked in a factory. Together, like I said, they raised two young boys and they did the best that they could as a young couple navigating life in a foreign country. But just after 8 months of joining his wife, everything will take a turn for the worst. It was on May 18th, 1981. And as the seasons stroll in, it's getting a little bit warmer outside and everyone is excited for summer. The days are longer. Flip-flops are coming out from under the bed. Like, life is worth living again. If you know anything about the UK, it's normally gloomy, it's sad, it's rainy. You know the vibes. But it gets a little bit better around spring, summer. So yeah, life is worth living again. So on this particular day, it was on a Monday, and people are busy preparing for the week ahead. The normal school runs, the jobs, and the usual chaos that comes with parenting and adulting. And so were they in the Johnsons' household until an argument broke out. According to Theodore, the argument was because Yvonne would not let Theodore go to church because he was not dressed well enough. And I must also say that everything that we know to have happened that day is told by Theodore, because Yvonne never got the chance to tell her part of the story. There were no eyewitnesses or neighbors called to court. It's only his word. Okay, so this argument is because he's not dressed well enough for church, right? It's a Monday, so maybe they were supposed to go for prayers or for Bible study, but Yvonne was not happy with how Theodore was dressed. She probably asked him to put on something a bit nicer, perhaps a little bit cleaner. He worked as a mechanic after all, and you know, with the oils on his clothes, the grime on his hands, it's not really Sunday best, is it? But he didn't see a problem with what he was wearing. Theodore would say that the argument turned physical when Yvonne hit him with a book. She then picked up an ashtray to hit him with it, but he blocked the ashtray and in turn hit her with the ashtray. Okay, he then picked up a vase, hit her with the vase. He also picked up a broom and hit her with the broom as well. So they're tussling around inside the apartment in the flat, and they ended up on the balcony, where Theodore would then overpower Yvonne and push her off the balcony of their 9th floor flat. It rained havoc at the time, as you would imagine. But you know what Theodore did? He went back into the apartment while Yvonne is on the ground, literally fighting for her life. So he went back into the apartment, changed his clothes, and went to his son's school, possibly to say goodbye because he knew what he had just done. By the time the paramedics came to the scene, 25-year-old Yvonne Johnson was pronounced dead. And Theodore didn't try to make a run for it or resist any arrest. He didn't say anything in the police van to the station, but he did admit to pushing her off the balcony. So the trial started in November of 1981. He told the court about how Yvonne forced him to do all of the housework, how he did all of the cooking, and he had suffered a lot of provocation at the hands of his wife in the 8 months that he'd been in the UK. And on that fateful day, he was just trying to defend himself. And the worst thing about this case is how the court and the media framed this story and blamed Yvonne for what happened. They called her his 12-stone wife and called him the 8-stone husband. So the picture that they were trying to paint here is how this puny little man couldn't defend himself against his big wife. It's giving Lord Farquaad and Princess Fiona, but as an ogre. Mind you, 12 stone is like 76 kilograms. She is anything but big. And 8 stone is 50 kilograms. Okay? I mean, thinking about it, actually there's no reason why a grown man should be weighing that much. But that's besides the point. He also told the court that he tried to save Yvonne from falling. But prosecutors said, actually, you little liar, you told the police that you pushed her twice off the balcony until she was hanging on with her hands. And then you stood there until she dropped. This was in the police report. He didn't try to save her, clearly. He could have if he wanted to, but he didn't. And so Yvonne died to her death. She died such a terrible death, having fallen off 9 floors. No, man, that is twisted. That is sick and twisted. She never had a voice to tell her part of the story. And at the sentencing, oh my God, this part. And then at the sentencing, you had the judge saying that Theodore had led a good and decent life and he's not a violent man. And my question is, how do you know that? He's only been in the UK for 8 months, okay? He went on to say, and I quote, "You have been a good father to your 2 young boys, and I'm satisfied that what happened because of the deep provocation you had been put to." This is a judge siding with a man who has been put up on trial for killing his wife. Maybe things were a little bit different in the 80s, but if we find little newspaper clippings of this case, they kind of relied heavily also on how, yeah, she made her clean the house and do all of the dishes and do this, that, and the third. Like, he's not meant to be helping out in the house. Is that not what people do? As a partner, you help your wife. I don't know why it's even called helping, like you are sharing a life together. Like, it's your house too, you know. She's not the only one living in that house. So this whole case was built on this provocation. And in November 4th, 1981, 27-year-old Theodore Johnson was sentenced to 3 years for manslaughter. The judge closed the case by saying that he had to demonstrate the sanctity of life. But he was treating Theodore very mercifully. I want you to let that sink in for a minute. And we have to recognize that a man was only sentenced to 3 years for killing his wife. 3 years. And the judge is calling it mercy. That sentencing in itself is criminal. The profile is not showing as much as I would like. So let's fix that quickly, shall we? So the story should end there, right? Him being in prison, serving out his sentence, being released after 3 years, and then after that, he's being deported back to Jamaica. I think he should have been deported, but he wasn't. I don't know why that is. But no, that is not how the story ends. Otherwise, I would not be sat here talking about it now, would I? The story should end with the part where he is a reformed man after prison and he goes on to lead, a normal life. But no. So after his release from prison, it is quiet on his end. Only God knows what he was up to. We do catch wind of him, though, in 1992. When he must have been about 38 years old. At this time, he was in a relationship with, get this, 25-year-old Yvonne. Her name is Yvonne Bennett. Either Yvonne was a very popular name back then, or he had just had a thing for Yvonne's. And she was also 25. And he killed his wife when she was 25. And her name was Yvonne. What gives? Just me? So at this point, they'd been dating for a while. They've been dating for about 7 years. And she was 25. So if she was 25 in 1992, they've been dating for 7 years. That means they first started seeing each other when she was 18 years old. Is that the math? Yeah, 18 years old. And they lived together in Low Hill in Wolverhampton. Theodore was very controlling in this relationship. He would tell her who she could talk to, where she could go, what she could wear. And it was just constant shouting matches in their home. And every time she would threaten to leave him, he would then threaten that he would kill himself, pretty much. Every single time. They have a little argument. She's like, you know what? I've had enough of this. I'm gonna leave your damn ass. He's like, yeah, when you do, I'm gonna kill myself. It's just too much. And this hold and control that he had on her, I think it's because of the age gap between them. She was 18 when they first got together and was well into his 30s. He is a very old man. It's giving grooming. By the time that we get wind of him in 1992, like I said, they already had a baby girl. It was a very tumultuous and unstable home to try to raise a child in, and she wanted better for her child. So what did she do? She packed up and moved all the way to London with her baby and got herself an apartment far, far away from Theodore. But guess what he did? He then followed her to London. Like, hello, do you not have a job? Where you can just up and leave just like that? Do you not have a job? She couldn't get rid of him. He was on her like white on rice. She tries to move out of the city. He is right there with her. Yvonne's sister, her name is Janet. Yeah. She despised Theodore, all for good reasons, all of the reasons that I mentioned. She somehow got in touch with his family in Jamaica, and they told her that, yay, tell your sister that she needs to get away from this man as soon as possible. They told Janet about the murder of Yvonne. Clearly, his family knew way more than that stupid judge in the first case, who sentenced him to 3 years. Just like any sensible person, she took this information to the police. She told them, hey, I think that my sister is in danger, okay? She is in a relationship with this very jealous, very controlling man. He has been in prison before for killing his wife, and I'm afraid that he might try to hurt my sister. Can you please do something about this? Well, did the police do anything? Absolutely not. Being controlling and being jealous isn't a crime. There actually has to be a crime committed. Then they can step in and do something. It's just the law. What would they do? So when he moved to London, he moved in with Yvonne. And I genuinely think that he didn't have a job, this man. Because if you had a job in Wolverhampton and you just up and leave, how quickly would you find a job in another city? He's probably depending on Yvonne to feed him, clothe him, take care of him and the baby. You know, literally all of the house chores, because as we know, it doesn't like house chores. He killed his wife because his wife wanted him to do house chores. And then it got to a point where Yvonne was like, you know what, I'm done. I'm done with all of this. I can't be taking this anymore. And then she left him and got herself a new man. So he was required to move out of this house. And he started stalking her. So anyone normal would probably go back to Wolverhampton, or maybe they get their own new space, or whatever the case may be. But not Theodore. Theodore was actually stalking her. He was following her around, trying to monitor her, what she's up to, who she's seeing, and on all of this. So Yvonne ended up telling her sister about all of this. Her name is Janet. I think I already introduced her. Janet then visited her in London for a couple of weeks. You know, keep an eye out for her sister. And she really truly believed that Theodore would hurt her sister. And she stayed with her for 3 weeks. So she helped out with the baby. They enjoyed each other's company for those 3 weeks. But little did she know that the day when she moved back to Wolverhampton will be the last day she would see her sister alive. So in the following week, after Janet had left, the police will be called to Yvonne's place to remove Theodore. What does remove mean? He wanted to move back in because he didn't have anywhere to go, or he wanted to insert himself back into her life, but she refused. I can't tell you. The thing with the reporting in the UK here is it doesn't really go in as much detail as the reporting in the US does. But that is just all I can tell you, that he was removed from her home in the last week of her life. He then went back to her apartment after a couple of days with a box of chocolate and tried to apologize and win her back. But Yvonne wanted absolutely nothing to do with Theodore. She had had enough of him, and Theodore saw that and realized that there is nothing that he could ever say or ever do that would make her change her mind and take him back. And that is when he struck. He strangled her with a belt while their 2-year-old daughter was sleeping in the other bedroom. So after killing Yvonne Bennett, he then left the apartment and went to a telephone booth. It's the 90s, okay, and called the police. He confessed to what he had done and told them that he was worried about his 2-year-old daughter who was in the apartment by herself. He then told the police that after he ends the call, he is going to end his life. He then walked over to a park armed with a string to apparently end his life. He failed, of course, because who hangs themselves with a string? And the police hauled his ass to jail. By calling the police and telling them about this attempt was planting a seed that he used in his defense in court. Okay, he pleaded diminished responsibility, saying that he was not in the right frame of mind when he strangled Yvonne, and he pointed out to his attempt with the string to sell his case. Doctors who tested him said that he had depression and a personality disorder. And I don't think that the first case was taken into account when they were sentencing him to this one. So he pleaded guilty to manslaughter, not murder, and was sentenced to a hospital order in a psychiatric unit indefinitely, meaning that he was meant to be there for the rest of his life. So was he there for the rest of his life? No. What do you think this is? Of course not. He was out in 2 years. Yeah, 2 years. It was actually 4 years. He got out in 97. So from 93 to 97, that's 4 years. I don't know why I keep on saying 2. After killing his second victim, out in 2 years. And I just kept on wondering how he did it. With his first victim, he was sentenced to 3 years in prison, which he served the sentence. And with his second victim, he was given a hospital order, but it was meant to be there indefinitely, meaning for the rest of his life. But somehow he managed to get out within 2 years. How? I'll tell you how. So Theodore was given the hospital order in March of 1993, right? But he had somehow convinced his carers that he was actually not a danger to anyone. And as part of his rehabilitation, he started taking a furniture restoration course at City and Guilds twice a week. Sometimes these visits to the outside were escorted by a carer and sometimes they were not. So he will be out by himself. But he always had to report back at the end of the day at the hospital, right? It was on one of these unescorted visits into the outside world that he met Angela Best. You know where the story is going already. They struck up a friendship and he started courting her and eventually they started dating. His carers didn't know about this, of course, but he did apply to be released from the hospital in 1996, but he was denied. He applied again in October of 1997 and he was successful this time around. But there is a condition. The condition put out by the mental health tribunal that released him was that he had to report any new relationships that he forms with women, either to his doctor or his social worker. They realized that he didn't pose any danger to a random woman on the street, but he did pose a danger to the women that he got involved with, the women that he formed relationships with. So did he report this new relationship with Angela? No. Did he ever mention it ever? No. Is it really my channel if I don't forget to press record? Like, anyway, as I was saying, so did he ever report his relationship with Angela to the authorities? Of course not. I didn't see any mentions of them ever having moved in together, but they did, you know, see each other. Each one had their own space and they will visit each other, spend the weekend at the other's place, spend a couple of days at the other's place, but they never really cohabited. So just like any other relationship, it's quite exciting in the first few months. You are learning about each other. You are learning this person, their little quirks and everything that just makes them, you know, and it's quite nice. You're thinking up, you're going to get married, have babies, you're picking out baby names. You're thinking the whole long haul. You're thinking you're going to spend the rest of your life with this person, right? Just me? Okay. I'm planning a whole wedding in the first week. Just saying, I did. But soon enough, you get to see the person for who they truly are. A tiger doesn't change its stripes. Is that the saying? Yeah, you know the saying that I'm talking about. Theodore, once again, was controlling, and there were instances where he hit Angela more than once. The family would say this much later on. Angela had 4 children of her own and never had any with Theodore. They were together for almost 20 years, and each time social workers or his doctor would ask him if he was in a relationship, if he was seeing anyone, if he was pursuing anyone, I would tell them no. He will deny everything. There were records in 2006, others in 2011 and in 2015. And as latest as just a week before, he ended up killing Angela, because you know how the story ends, right? And he just kept on denying that he was in a relationship with Angela. Whole time she is there. She is in the picture. His family back in Jamaica knew about her. His work colleagues knew about her as well. It was just like an open secret. It's interesting though how his family didn't tell Angela about his past like they did with Yvonne Bennett. I don't know why they did it. Maybe he had changed. I don't know. So after years of abuse and control, allegedly, Angela found a letter in his house detailing one of these killings. Now, it's not very clear whether it was from his doctor or from his social worker, and they were discussing his case, but Angela found out about it. So she found out about his past. And I don't know how that discussion went about, how they talked about it, but it was the thing that actually ended up making Angela leave Theodore. So she went on with her life, even found a new partner, and friends and family would say that she looked really happy again. She looked happier than she'd been in a very, very long time. Theodore continued to profess his love endlessly on a daily basis, but she was just done with him. She didn't want to get back with him. She was done. Okay, she didn't want anything to do with Theodore, especially considering his past that he should have told her about. So he didn't take this rejection well at all, as you would imagine. And those closest to him said that he stopped eating, so he lost a lot of weight. Adding to that, he also had poor personal hygiene, which is counterintuitive if you're trying to get back with your ex. Isn't the whole thing to remind her of like what she's missing out on, what she's losing? But if you're going to be showing up dirty and stinky, of course she's going to tell you no, right? On December 8th, 2016, Theodore told his doctor that he was feeling lonely and that he had been thinking a lot about how things have never really went well or went right in his life. He just looked very, very depressed. Another appointment was arranged for him to be seen in a couple of days, but the doctor didn't show up because they were unwell, and their appointment was rearranged for the following week. So a couple of days after that, Theodore called Angela about some assistance with some paperwork with the Jamaican embassy. Maybe he wanted to go back home, you know. Angela, who is ever so kind, showed up at his house to do exactly that, but she would never leave his house alive. We don't know what happened in the house, but it's safe to assume that he started talking about them getting back together and she told him no. An argument ensued, and that is when he struck. He hit her 6 times with a claw hammer on the head. She also sustained injuries on her hands and her arms as she tried to protect her head. He then used a nightgown belt to strangle her to death. It was such a brutal and vicious attack that he broke her hyoid bone. Hyoid? I hope that's how you say it. So after killing her, he then left the body in his living room and got into his car and drove to Chestnut Station, where he threw himself into the train tracks. It's exactly what he did with Yvonne Bennett, trying to take his own life after killing her. All of this because she told him that she doesn't want him anymore. He can't handle rejection, and she had moved on without him. He got so jealous that he resorted to ending her life and then attempting to end his life after the matter. Like, men really need to learn how to handle rejection a little bit better. If someone doesn't want you, they don't want you. And the more you try to force it on them, the more they will not want you. So take your losses, go find someone else who will actually like you for you. But if you can't handle rejection to the point where you end up killing your partner, you need help. Okay, so Theodore, he threw himself into the train tracks and he survived that little stunt, but he did lose both of his arms. His right arm was amputated just below the shoulder, and his left arm was amputated just above the wrist. By amputated, I mean by the train where he threw himself in. People who witnessed it called the police and an ambulance, and he was quickly rushed to the hospital where doctors worked tirelessly in intensive care to try to save his life. It was when he was still in intensive care being treated that the police would go to his house, potentially to inform his family members, of a neighbor, somebody, you know, about what had happened. But as they walked into his living room, that is when they found Angela in a pool of her own blood with a bloody claw hammer only a few distance from her. They also realized that this is bigger than what they had initially thought. It quickly turned from a courtesy call from the police to a potential homicide investigation. When they pulled his records, they saw his past convictions and realized that he had just struck yet again. He was then arrested while he was still in the hospital for the murder of Angela Best. He denied killing her while he was in custody. He said that he didn't do it. The nerve of this man, the audacity is astronomical. She was found in your house, bludgeoned and strangled. You have a history with her. You have a history of killing your partners. And they have your fingerprints, dumbass. Oh, I forgot, you ain't got no hands. It may sound like I'm happy that he lost his hands, but I'm really not. It's just poetic justice when you think about it. He used his hands to take lives, and those hands were snatched from him. Yeah, let's see you try to kill people with your feet. In prison. The man, I can't stand him. I can't stand him at this point. If something like this happened back home in Botswana, we'll say like, yeah, he's got a really, really powerful witch doctor, because it's not adding up. Okay, it's not adding up. So his hearing comes in May of 2017, and he pleads not guilty to murder, but to manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. And he said that he was not in the right state of mind, referencing back to how he tried to end his life after what happened. Again, this is like the whole thing with Yvonne Bennett's case all over again. This was going to be a lengthy trial, but just as they were preparing for that, he stood up in court and said that he did it. He murdered Angela Best. Shocker. Everyone knew you did it. And that was when he pleaded guilty to the murder of Angela Best. At his sentencing, the judge said, and I quote, "This is the third time when you have killed a female partner, though I note and take into account the fact that the two previous occasions were many years ago, and as I have already observed, resulted in convictions of manslaughter and not murder. Such repeated offending resulting in 3 separate court cases must be almost unprecedented." And so on January 5th, 2018, 64-year-old Theodore Johnson was sentenced to 26 years in prison. He didn't react as this sentencing was said out loud. Instead, he just had his hand down the entire time in court. This sentencing was later appealed by the Crown Court, and he was sentenced to a minimum of 30 years. So it is safe to say that he's most likely going to die in prison. He'll likely go blind because he has glaucoma. Is it glaucoma? Glaucoma. Yeah. And diabetes. And he's got no hands. Jeez, man. Like, yeah, he is being punished. And he's going to be relying on other people for the simplest of tasks for the rest of his life. Right now, as of 2025, he is still in prison. And I'm quite surprised that he is still kicking. I really thought that by this time he would have, kicked the bucket, but he's got no hands, does he? So after Angela's murder, there was an inquest that was carried out to try to determine what had happened exactly and how it can be used in future cases so that they prevent something like this happening again. His Majesty's Coroner Mary Hassel found out, and I'm going to try to summarize this for you, okay? The Mental Health Tribunal's restriction on Theodore Johnson was flawed as it relied on self-reporting any new relationships. The whole premise is that once he gets into a relationship, he will then tell his doctor or his social worker, and then they will meet up with this new girlfriend or new partner, sit her down, and they will say something to the effect of, "It is very important that we let you know that your boyfriend here is a killer. He pushed his wife to her death in their flat in 1981, and he also strangled the mother of his daughter in 1992. It is required of us to let you know this so that you can make an informed decision moving forward." If this is not the dumbest thing I've ever heard, of course it's not going to tell them. Anyone with half a brain will bolt when they hear that. And I'm really trying not to be disrespectful to the Mental Health Tribunal people. There's a very learned people that are very educated and know way better than I ever will. Okay, but come on. Some things only make sense on paper, but when it's applied, it just doesn't make any sense. You are relying on someone who is not necessarily forthcoming with the truth, a murderer, to tell you when they have a new woman in their life. This new woman that they like very much. so that you can then come in and tell this woman that this man that she finds very attractive, she finds very charming, is a murderer. And in the process of that, in the process of you telling them the truth, they risk the potential of this woman leaving him. What do you think is really going to happen here? And you are telling the court, you're telling the good judge that Theodore Johnson didn't tell you that he had a woman and you were not aware that Angela Best was in his life. Duh. Of course he wouldn't tell you. Who would? Who would? I know that I wouldn't. The coroner also found out that Angela Best would probably not have been killed if the relationship had been known. She also announced that she will be making a report to prevent further deaths to the Ministry of Justice. But also, if I may, playing devil's advocate here, if she had been alerted about his past and had chosen to stay, how are they going to ensure that she is safe from his attack? Because it's not like they would know well in time and prevent it from happening. Because when you think about it, it's not like they knew when he would attack and then rush over to prevent it, or they had CCTV in his house and would respond promptly. You know what I mean? And they knew when they let him out of the hospital that he was more likely going to kill another partner. How are they going to ensure that she is safe from his attack? Do you know what I find to be the most fascinating part of this story is how the judges reacted to this case in the first two convictions. It was like every time Theodore would show up in court, he somehow pulled the Puss in Boots, you know, the cartoon, the character, the little hat in hand, the big and blinking eyes, little quiver of the lips. And the judge will go, oh, come on, look at him. He's so small and so harmless. Like he would never. What do you mean? The man is on trial for killing a woman. He admitted to it. That's like that is so mind-boggling to me. Like how did he actually look in court? Actually, I was reminded of this case when the Iryana Zaruska story came out about 2 months ago, I think. And I just thought, like, you know what? It just keeps on happening. So here's a little bit of a refresher if you don't know what I'm talking about. This happened in North Carolina in America, and you can see everything that unfolded on CCTV. So Iryana Zaruska is 23 years old and she was a refugee from Ukraine. She fled to America, she found a job, she moved in with her partner and, you know, tried to rebuild her life. So on this day, Iryana got on the train to go home after a long shift from work. She then sits down, scrolling on her phone like most people would do. Right? She didn't even say anything to anyone. She just kept to herself. Then there was a man who was sat behind her. He stood up and stabbed her right in the neck. You could see the shock on her face as she looked at him and realized what had just happened. Iryana died such a horrific death from an unprovoked attack. The man who did this is DeCarlos Brown Jr. He is a career criminal who had been arrested about 14 times from armed robbery to assault, you name it. It was deeply upsetting to anyone who saw that video, and it also happened around the same time that Charlie Kirk got assassinated. Because I remember I saw both of those videos on the same day. And it is very different hearing how someone had died and to actually seeing it with your own two eyes. But get this, the mayor of Charlotte, her name is V. Lyles, either V or Vi. She came out about 4 days later, right, on Twitter and urged people to have compassion for those with mental health issues and those that are unhoused. She said, and I quote, "We will never arrest our way out of issues such as homelessness and mental health." And she called for treatment of mental health with the same compassion as cancer or heart disease. People said, what? What did you say? What did you actually say? They called her stupid. They called her all sorts of names. They chewed her up, spit her out, chewed her up again. She had no choice but to delete the tweet. It was so tone deaf and focusing on the wrong thing. A young woman was brutally murdered, and she would rather people focus on more systemic issues and mental health rather than De Carlos's very long criminal history. This just goes on to show how public officials sometimes misstep when balancing empathy with accountability, and how that mirrors systemic leniency, just like in the case of Theodore Johnson. Domestic abuse, whether on men or women, is wrong. And based off the cases that would later follow, I believe that Theodore lied in the case of Yvonne Johnson. He was treated like a victim as opposed to the perpetrator that he truly is. In the first conviction, he was charged with manslaughter due to provocation, blaming Yvonne for the murder. And in the second conviction, it was manslaughter due to diminished responsibility, again taking the blame off him for the true crime of murder. All because he was not right in the head at the time that he committed the crime. He just played the system. That's just what I believe. I believe that he played the system. He had to kill for the third time to be seen for what he truly was. I don't know how he did this. And should he not have been deported back to Jamaica after his first sentence? Why was he still in the UK? I also don't know what happened to his children after he was sentenced to prison after killing their mother. Because I don't think that they had any other family in the UK. As for his daughter, she was most likely placed with Yvonne Bennett's family. And that is it. That is the case of Theodore Johnson. He is a serial killer. And I believe this is the first serial killer case that I've covered in this channel. But yeah, I am curious to know what you guys think about this case. What do you think could have been done? Did we answer the questions that we had in the beginning? I don't know. I think the short answer will be he just played the system. That's the simple answer. Like, they looked at this man, this little man, is like, oh nah, he would never, and he was the victim instead of the perpetrator. It's just so fascinating. But I am curious to know what you guys think about this case. Leave your thoughts down in the comment section and let's keep this conversation going. If you are interested in more cases like this, then make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And yeah, let me know what you guys think. And until the next one, please take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I will see you very, very soon. Okay, bye. Bye, 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 bye.